If analysts had to characterize the first GOP debate, it's safe to say the candidates struggled to stand out. Things did get spirited at times, as you saw, and they did take shots at each other in Milwaukee. Joining me on the Morning Show News for Jack's political analyst and head of the JU Public Policy Institute, Rick Mullaney. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Bruce.
So let's start with Ron DeSantis. He was at the center of the debate stage, but he wasn't center of the evening. Any breakout moments for the Florida governor?
He had some good moments. I wouldn't call it a breakout performance, but he did have some very good moments. On crime, for example, Bruce, he talked about Florida hitting a 50-year low in crime, and he talked about George Soros-backed prosecutors in Florida, two of them who weren't, in his view, doing their job, and he removed them. He said that to loud applause. On immigration, he talked about the lethal use of force and potentially going after those cartels in Mexico. Again, he received great support. On the economy, early in the debate, he talked about we're a nation in decline and talked about Florida's success. And then later in the debate, he did well, more personal, talking about his family, his children, a strong close. However, early in the debate, after the first question, he was relatively invisible. He had a growing presence during the debate. If you're a Ron DeSantis supporter, there's a lot to point to. He had an overall, I think, a good performance, but I wouldn't call it a breakout performance.
And there's a new kid in town, talking about the 38-year-old businessman, Vivek Ramaswamy. He is widely expected to be the wild card. He quickly learned that fire brings fire.
Well, if you want to use the fire brings fire analogy, he lit the fuse. Last night, he said everyone on this stage is bought and paid for. A very disparaging remark for the people on that stage. He called them all professional politicians. He said they were super PAC puppets, and then he pretended he wasn't attacking them. Well, that fire drew fire. You had Vivek in a battle with Chris Christie. You had him with Mike Pence. You had him with Nikki Haley. Chris Christie in particular had a line that was fairly memorable, saying he sounds like he's Chat GPT. But probably the low point for him was on foreign policy. He was the only one on the stage who said he would not continue funding for the Ukraine. He was took to task by Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley, I thought, showed great command in foreign policy. She went right after him on foreign policy, on Israel, on China, and on the Ukraine. However, having said all that, he was the center of attention. He was energetic. He knows how to play to the Trump base. He was the one who said, let's talk about the fact that I'm going to pardon Donald Trump. Let's talk about the fact that he's the best president in his view in the 21st century. So expect him to continue to rise. He was the center of attention. He took a lot of incoming. A lot of that he brought on himself.
Let's talk about Donald Trump. Debate moderator Brett Baer from Fox News called him the elephant not in the room. He skipped the debate, instead gave an interview with Tucker Carlson that aired elsewhere. Some say that gave the debate the feeling of an undercard in boxing. Your take?
In the end, Bruce, the main event is Donald Trump. And there were 8 people on the stage last night. I thought they were well prepared. At times they spoke over each other. At times you couldn't control them. But generally well prepared, a big policy discussion. They went at it pretty well. But the looming presence, the looming shadow is Donald Trump. He's in the lead by far. It doesn't appear that anything, well, on the horizon are those trials next year in 2024, but nothing has derailed him so far. That hasn't derailed him. His arrest today in Atlanta won't derail him. So as you look forward, the main event, despite, and the shadow, was Donald Trump's big shadow looming over last night. He is the main event.
As you alluded to, they talked about a lot of issues. Border control, the economy, but abortion took center stage. And if there's one issue that the GOP seems vulnerable on, it is the abortion issue.
Bruce, I completely agree with that. I believe abortion is a tremendous vulnerability for the Republican Party. And you don't have to look just forward, you can look backward. In the midterm elections in 2022, just under a year ago, in November of last year, it was one of the reasons why the Republicans underperformed. As you look to 2024, it is a looming issue for the Republicans. It is a challenge. They haven't found their footing. And last night's debate, you could see that they still haven't found their footing. There is a difference on the stage, and they debated a federal ban versus states' rights. They debated how far you would go and how far you would not go. I thought Nikki Haley did well here. By the way, I also thought she had a pretty good night on foreign policy. She'll get a second look from many people. But on the abortion issue, it is a clear vulnerability, and the Republicans are struggling to find where they're going to land.
So let me slip in a question here about the former president turning himself in at the Fulton County Jail tonight. The sheriff made it clear he's not going to be treated any differently than anybody else, which may mean that there'll be a mugshot, unlike during the previous times. But I think the bigger question becomes, after all is said and done, and the president goes, assuming he goes before the microphones, can he keep things under control and not violate the judge's order about saying things he shouldn't?
Bruce, if he's true to form, he's going to push the envelope. He continues to push the envelope. And that was already coming up in some of the other cases out of the D.C. case, in which they've actually had a hearing already this, and the judge has imposed some restrictions. We obviously are going to have to wait and see, but he has a track record, and if he's consistent with that track record, he will very much push the envelope, and he'll test the judge to the limit.